Yeah. Okay, shall we start, everyone? Okay, good morning, good noon, and good evening, all the audience from everywhere, the friends and the guest members of Singularity Academy and SwissCham Asia. Today, we are very happy to organize another webinar following the last time's webinar on the topic of AI and all the related consequences, reasons, and issues for AI and about AI. Today we have several very frontier experts about AI from all over the world. And as you can see, I put the link on our chat box about our speakers. Unfortunately, our first speaker, Harmy, couldn't join us today because of the flu. So we will start from our speakers from Jachin Cheng, and then afterwards to Salama Belghali. And these two speakers, actually, one is from Asia, for example, Jachin actually from the Asia and have very rich experience in Asia and also in US, working in US for several years, especially in Google. And Salama has a very rich experience in both banking and emerging technologies. Because this webinar is co-organized between Singularity Academy and SwissCham Asia, I want to first invite the president of SwissCham Asia, Dr. Urs Lustenberger, to give us an opening speech. And then we move to our AI expert speech. Okay, the floor is yours, Urs.
Thank you, Professor Cheng. It's always a pleasure to co-host a meeting with somebody like Singularity Academy. We see that the content is highly professional and the content is highly academic. And of course, our members very much enjoy to be at the forefront of what's happening here. Those who have carefully looked at the invitation, they have seen that the first webinar that we held was in the name of the Swiss Asian Chamber of Commerce, and right now it is in the name of SwissCham Asia. Swiss Asian Chamber of Commerce is wearing new clothes, and these new clothes make it even more attractive. In these new clothes, we are, of course, still heavily looking for new members. So anyone in the audience interested to join our membership, if anybody is not yet a member yet, should do so by approaching anyone on the panel. No, by approaching on the panel, either Tok-Seng Lo, Professor Cheng, or myself. And we will guide you on how to become a member. As Professor Cheng said, this is the second seminar or webinar in a series. It will be highly interesting and almost mind-boggling, at least for my generation, because the progress that has been made in the last few years in the sector of AI is just unbelievable. I believe the acceleration will continue to take place. The next webinar that we plan at the end of November will be less academic and less futuristic. It will deal with climate-friendly energy solutions. And then the last seminar of the year will deal with the future of sunset industries. Stay tuned. We are just beginning in our new clothes, and it will be an interesting trip forward. And with this, I want to give the floor back to Professor Cheng.
Okay, thank you very much for this opening speech. I wish the chamber with the new clothes will look much better and look much more fashion in the AI new era. Let's back to our setup. Jackie Cheng, is a person that we desperately want to invite for a long time. And our organizing committee, is so excited that Jackie could make some time for us and talk about the frontier, what's going on AI, and what is the big change between West and East in this emerging and fascinating changes. We will have Jackie talk about it, and we will keep all the questions in the end. So if any people in the audience who have questions, please kindly leave your question in the chat box, and then we will propose your questions to the panel discussion. Okay, thank you. And Jackie, now the floor is yours.
Jackie, you're on mute.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction. I am very pleased to be here and honored to be invited to speak on this panel. I should mention before starting with the talk that I also have a bit of a Swiss connection, having lived there for 6 years. And 2 of our 3 children were born in Switzerland. And so we have fond memories and good friends there and continue to go back when we can. Yeah, with that, I would love to frame the conversation this way, and that is, I'll go through 3 sections and offer my perspectives on AI from where we sit right now, but from different lenses, from a practitioner's point of view as a builder, how I think about building with AI, also as an angel investor and working with some early stage venture capitalists as an investor, how I view AI. And then also on a more personal note, as I mentioned, we have 3 kids, and how do I think about raising them and what is their future going to be like with AI? So through the lens of a parent. And so that's the organizing principle. I hope this is interesting. And to kick it off, I'd like to tell a story. And so this was a very normal day in Southern California in Santa Monica. It was in the morning, maybe around 9 a.m. And I had just parked my car in the basement of the Google office in Santa Monica. It's about 500 miles south of the Google headquarters in Northern California. And as I parked my car and I got out, I met these 2 other guys just getting out of their car. And it was not a normal car. And they were beside themselves. They were giddy. They were nonplussed. They were breathless. And so I stopped to talk with them. Where did you come from? They were just in street clothes. They didn't look like they really necessarily worked at Google, but I had to stop and talk to them. And you know what they told me? They said, we just finished a 2-day road trip. We drove all the way down from the Google headquarters in Northern California. And the route we took was Highway 1. Now, if you don't know, this is the quintessential scenic highway in America. It runs along the coast of the Pacific Ocean with beautiful views and sharp cliffs that drop off straight into the ocean. And there's, in many places, not even a guardrail between you and the blue waters of the Pacific. And they had just come off of this drive. They took 2 days to drive down 500 miles. And so what was so special here? What was so special is that they said the car drove itself. We just sat in the car and the car drove itself. Now you can imagine, and if any of you have vehicles with auto driving assistance and so forth, that must be quite harrowing to be on these tight curves going along the ocean. But somehow they made it, and they were so excited to be in Southern California, safe and sound. But the car that I saw that day, the not normal car, did not look like this. It looked like this. The year was 2009. This was 15 years ago, where this was even before it was branded Waymo. Google was experimenting with self-driving cars, and it was one of the first prototypes that we had developed, and they took this massive road trip on a very treacherous, tortuous road to Southern California. Now, why do I tell you this story? It's to illustrate a principle called Amara's Law. And that is, people tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. Right, so Roy Amara, he was president of the Future Institute of Future Society. He was so he coined this. He coined this mentality, or coined this phrase, and I find it so instructive because what it says to me, and what the self-driving car story tells to me, is AI will play out over a lot longer period of time than we think. Right? There's a long road ahead of us and a lot of things to do. And it will affect us more deeply, but maybe a little bit more slowly than we think. So as a builder, 3 different points I want to make in this section. One is there's a lot of work ahead. I won't, in my lifetime, be out of a job. AI will not take over my job. There's so much building left to do. Secondly, industries must evolve. And then third, the fundamentals of strategy still hold true in a world of AI. So in November 2022, there was this ChatGPT moment, right? AI, research, machine learning. Actually, there have been teams working on this for decades. And so what you're looking at here is a graph of Google searches. You can look it up, called Google Trends. It's a little bit of a tool where you can look globally the interest over time as measured by Google searches. And we make this broadly available, or Google makes this broadly available. And you'll notice the blue line of ChatGPT was never heard of before until November 2022. And AI in red was a new concept for some people, but it was on a slow simmer for many years before 2022. All of a sudden, in November, there was this explosion of public awareness because of ChatGPT. And not only did that particular product gain 100 million users almost overnight, but it really created an aha moment for the public that all of this research, all of these things that Google had been doing behind the scenes, that other companies, Meta, OpenAI, and so forth, there is something really here. And it was the simplicity of ChatGPT that really turned the lights on for a lot of people. One note, ChatGPT and the models behind it were actually several years in the making. So that technology that caught people's imagination in November 2022 was actually around for several years before it really started to take off. But right now, I would say we are in or maybe coming off of the peak of a bit of a hype cycle around AI. The expectations are through the roof. And the technology is a bit through the roof. And so this is Andrew Ng, one of the preeminent figures in the AI circles. And he says, even if we pause AI innovation, it would take a decade to apply existing technology across industries. Right, so as Dr. Lustenberger had mentioned, the dramatic increase in innovation and capabilities and so forth that's coming out of these foundational technologies like large language models, all of a sudden came onto the public scene. But what Andrew is saying is if we just hit pause on all of that, OpenAI, Google, Meta, right, Microsoft, everybody just stops the foundational AI innovation, we would have enough capability to go apply to many industries over the next decade. So that tells me, as a practitioner, as a builder, that there's a lot of industries, there's a lot of applications, and we're still super early in both the applications of the technology, but as you know, the investments and the innovation into the core technologies will continue. So a quick question, what did these two watches have in common? The Seiko Astron, launched in 1969, and the first Apple Watch, released in 2015. And if you don't know, it's that these are probably the two most despised watches in Switzerland. They represent technology waves that severely impacted, right, Swiss watchmakers in the late 60s. Quartz technology represented a low-cost alternative to the high-end sophisticated watchmaking that was happening in Switzerland at the time. And similarly, so that was one wave. And then later in 2015, the first smartwatch, the Apple Watch, represented a whole different kind of wrist accessory that went far beyond timekeeping. And it included all other functionalities like connecting to your phone, health monitoring, so on and so forth. So, but there was a competitive response, right? In Switzerland, what I love, the backstory, Swatch watch. I remember growing up in the 80s where Swatch was very desirable. It was at a low cost point. And so there was this classic response of either low cost competition or differentiation. And I like that story because no matter what industry people are in right now, I do expect AI to some degree to be the Seiko Astron or the Apple Watch for your industry. So you'll have to change. And even going beyond, right, what Rolex, let's say Rolex responded with differentiation around status and craftsmanship and exclusivity, and right, and even beyond that, Richard Mille has taken it as a newcomer, but they've taken it even beyond, I would say, Rolex, which is now they're differentiating on craftsmanship, on artwork. This is art and craftsmanship on your wrist. You can barely read the time on this thing. It's still a watch, but you don't buy it for timekeeping. You don't buy it for, right, tracking how many steps that you made today. And so I mentioned that to say all of these industries, whether new industries, old industries, will be impacted in perhaps unknown ways. So what do you do if you're in an industry and the question comes up, well, what are you going to do about AI? And I would submit, and I would, if there's one book I were to recommend in this talk, it's this book from 2011, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. And I won't try to summarize the book. If you have time, please read it. The big takeaway here for me is that the fundamentals of strategy still apply when considering how do we respond to this new technological advancement of AI. And what do I mean by that? I'll give you one example. So the book talks about how good strategy really starts with a clear diagnosis of the problem statement, right? Bad strategy sounds a lot like hope. Like we hope to improve our business, our top line revenue, our bottom line profitability by deploying AI in our company, right? That's a hope statement. Good strategy starts with what specific problem are we solving, right? And this, as a product manager, as a product leader, this is absolutely the starting point for how I think about product and good product strategy. It begins with the why. it begins with not with, okay, I'm going to start with the technology. I have AI. Where can I go solve things with it? But much rather, it starts with a problem statement by deeply understanding what are the particular problems that we're trying to solve, and is AI a good fit for that or not? And I'm happy to talk about that more, but I just wanted to touch on that because I see this as one of the biggest traps that people, especially in these early days of AI, they fall into in terms of practicing or applying AI is, okay, I have this hammer. Now everything looks like a nail. I'm just going to try to fit it in. And it's a really bad way to start. So switching gears a bit to the investor lens. In addition to some angel investing, I've been working with Coupang Capital. I'm based in Singapore. It's a single family office backed early stage VC. And we're focused on investments in AI, fintech, and B2B SaaS. And one of the things, one way I like to think about it, among other things, some of the areas that I like to highlight when we look at good investment opportunities comes down to 3 Ds: data, distribution, and demographics. So we'll go through those in order. Some people have said AI is the new electricity. And so I would posit if AI is the new electricity, then data is the new coal or wind or solar, or name your renewable energy. There was this Cambrian explosion of AI innovation, and the 3 main inputs were longstanding research that extends back decades, an inordinate amount of compute power that's been enabled by new hardware, and thirdly, tremendous amounts of data, right? So through several decades of digitization, of data collection across the web, across all manner of software, we now have all this data to train on. And these are the 3 main inputs that has enabled the more recent AI innovations. And so from an investor standpoint, I think about data as a moat, but also as a monetizable asset, right? And so we look for things like proprietary data. Most of the large language models and so forth are trained on publicly available data. Increasingly, they're running out of that data source, and either they have to synthesize data or create new data to train on, or they need to look for new sources, and proprietary data or hard to acquire data that others can't assemble quickly. These are quite desirable from an investment standpoint. But there's still a bit of a hurdle. And that is, even if you've been collecting data for many years, it needs to be usable. It needs to be clean data. And so I'll share an example of one industry that I dove into a bit, the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. Just as an example, I think this industry, it's getting ahead of itself a bit in the excitement of what you can do with generative AI. What do I mean by that? So right now, there's if you search for, hashtag mid-journey architecture, there's a whole subgenre of super eager designers, architects, and like myself, architect wannabes, who are designing just beautiful, evocative imagery of built spaces. And you can do this with tools like Midjourney. There's a number of other tools. Architects are mood boarding, they're exploring new concepts. And this is beautiful and it's wonderful and it's creating all kinds of creative innovation. And this in particular is my my attempt. So this is my prompt for Mid-Journey, imagine a modern art museum extending the resorts world Sentosa development, right, in Singapore. So it's out on the ocean, it's right, surrounded by beautiful greenery. And I would love to visit any one of those variations of a modern art museum. The problem is that there's a big gap between inspirational concept design, which you can achieve within minutes, and buildable design documents or construction documents, right? You can do this on the left in minutes. And then it could be weeks, if not months, to go through the slog of designing subsystems, structural integrity, energy efficiency, so on and so forth. So there's this huge gap between the two. Now you could argue that there's a ton of data. The AEC community has a ton of data, thousands of projects, tons of 2D CAD drawings, tons of 3D BIM models. We have that data. But as I dug into it and went and talked with a number of leading architects, large leading architects, they said our data is all over the place. We have 17 different drawings of the same building, of the same subsystem. We don't even know which one we built. We have all of this data. It's not well labeled. It's not that usable. And so we're stuck. And so this is a bit of my request, is if anybody in the audience or if anybody on the panel knows where I could find clean data for about 5,000 building projects. This is probably what it would take to build or train or fine-tune a multimodal LLM that could take building inspiration like you have on the left and very rapidly create construction documents on the right. There are some startups that are trying to do this now, but imagine taking all the unstructured text you have about that building, user requirement specifications, building codes, zoning laws for that location. And then any construction documents that you might have, 2D, 3D, as well as artistic renderings, whether they're hand sketches or architectural renderings and final construction photos. If somebody could bring together that information for 5,000 projects within, I would say, 2 years, we could have an AI architect and construction manager who could manage that project from end to end. Like, these are the types of things that are becoming possible. In this case, the friction is the data is there, but it's dirty, it's hard to clean up, it's hard to aggregate enough to make this kind of thing possible. But this is another example of data, why data is so important. Now I'm going to switch to distribution. I'm stealing these next few slides from Code 2. I love this graph. Internet is in blue. This is the traditional S-curve. Smartphones in another technology wave in purple. And what I would say here is the two takeaways are, for me, is as an investor, we can be patient because there are good companies to be founded all along the S-curve, right? From the early innovators at the bottom to the later comers like Facebook, LinkedIn, and so forth. These were built all along the curve of adoption. And so there's not a rush that we have to accomplish everything, that all the great companies will be first or second mover advantage. We don't need to rush. Likewise with smartphones. The second thing it tells me about is incumbents, right? So this was an interesting concept, which, okay, for the smartphone S-curve, how did incumbents fare? What kind of market value cap did they increase by within the smartphone era? And it was 12x, 12 times that of startups or native mobile first companies that came later. So there's still room for native, native first mobile companies. There was room, but it wasn't quite as profitable as for the incumbents. And why is that? A lot of it has to do with distribution, right? Incumbents own the B2B and the B2C channels. The cloud and SaaS providers, they have the customer relationships. It's very hard to penetrate into their customer base. Similarly, the Metas of the world, Google, Instagram, own the front door to the internet. Even the mobile providers through their Play Store, App Store, they're gatekeepers for reaching B2C customers. So B2B startups, they need to partner, or they need to partner with incumbents to find pathways or go to market with incumbents, or they need to compete orthogonally. And so that's what some of the biggest mobile startups did when they got their start, which is they unlocked, based on the new mobile technology that became available, they unlocked new user behaviors that never existed before. And so that's something that we also think about with AI startups, is what new user behaviors will AI unlock, especially at the application layer. Finally, demographics. Finally, for this section, demographics, both as a strength or competitive advantage for the startups, and also as an opportunity for new markets, to reach new markets. We're primarily focused Kadaan is primarily focused in Southeast Asia and Japan, opportunistic about the Middle East and the US. But what we find, and I'm personally very interested in, is AI founders who have data and in the form of local languages that maybe incumbents don't have, or local market knowledge, or regional earned insights. And so we think deeply about not only the demographics for the founders, but also for the target market, right? In Asia, we're facing new demographic forces like aging and declining workforce. There's new use cases around elder care that are emerging, and also a new segment that we think is addressable with AI-powered solutions. And that is, the smaller you get in businesses, SMB, micro, nano, solopreneurs, the harder and harder it becomes for incumbents and large software enterprise companies to serve. In fact, most of these are underserved by incumbents. And so we think there's an opportunity to sell work as work units as opposed to selling software seats. And so that's what I have to say about from the lens of an innovator, an investor. Finally, to switch gears to parent, because I think we're not only concerned about ourselves, those who have kids, but we're concerned about what's the world going to look like when our kids hit working age. 3 points here. Number one, learn, rinse, and repeat. Number two, the fundamentals of humanity. And number three, people or kids need to either build AI, use AI, or craft. And I'll talk about that. This is something that I stress. Learning will be lifelong, right? And I think maybe Salama will touch on this as well, which is right now, learning is extending all the way through end of life. And what you learn today, you'll have to learn something new tomorrow. And so what I'm hopeful for and I'm trying to cultivate in our kids is just a love of learning new things. It could be anything, just to get into the motion of learning. Secondly, what makes us uniquely human? There are things that machines can emulate very, very well. There are things that machines can outperform humans, right? Chess AI has long outperformed human chess playing, right? But there are some things that make us uniquely human. Our ability to empathize, our morality, even our imperfections. our ability to share the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat in sports, or even more viscerally, right, holding eye contact or giving a hug. These are all things that I hope to focus on with our kids, because I think they will become increasingly important in the age of AI. AI can't beat in-person human relationships. So one bold prediction I have is in about 25 years, hospitals will provide humanity care more so than healthcare. What does that mean? Doctors are essentially highly trained algorithms, right? Who've trained and paid their dues over many years of medical school and looking at x-rays and reading medical protocols. They're so highly trained, and that's why they're valuable and paid well. But you know who's even more highly trained very soon? AI in a lot of disciplines will outperform doctors, even specialists. And so what does the role of a hospital become? It becomes a place where you can look in the face of another human being who will care for you with their humanity, not just with a printout of your cancer diagnosis from a machine, right? And so I think these skills, these things that make us human, will become even more valuable. So what should our kids do? I do think either they should find a vocation, or they should find a way to either build AI, and there's a long road ahead to build with AI, or become a user, a power user of AI. But the human side of it, I hope, is never lost. And I would also encourage the next generation to think about becoming a craft human, not just a craftsman, craftwoman, but somebody who can create something of value that a machine cannot create, right? Back to watchmaking. You know, what they're making and what they're selling is no longer about function. It's about feeling. In fact, this watch is called the Smiley, and they literally talk about selling smiles. They're selling feeling. They're selling craftsmanship. They're selling an experience. And as the world progresses and becomes more automated with AI, I think craftsmanship, and I think even the imperfection of humanity, will become even more valuable. The Japanese have this phrase, wabi-sabi. I really like it. It's about appreciating beauty that has its imperfections and impermanence and incompleteness. I think increasingly, as you know, a vast amount of society over a longer period of time starts to adopt AI, the flaws of our humanity, people will find delight in that, and continue to come back to what makes us human at our core. And so thank you for the opportunity to talk, share some of my experiences and thoughts about the future. I'm also looking forward to questions and the discussion afterwards.
Thank you very much, Jackin. It is really interesting. The thing I really like your presentation is you talk about the past, present, and also you talk about expectation and future next generation. I'm very sure today many of our audience are parents. And me as a mother of 4 children, I tell you, my everyday concern is how my children in the future dealing with AI and what kind of life they will have. And interesting things, for example, my oldest daughter, 14 years old, in the school, they already started to independently within their group, friends group, started to talk about AI, not talking with teacher about this topic, but they set up their study group and discuss about AI things. That's really fascinating, even though they're in Europe, and you know that Europe is comparing to Asia, and US is really stone age in AI application, especially in the in the education field. So I really happy that you touch into this field and also touch to the point that in the future, the healthcare will become humanity and human-based, and then will be the human care, humanity care. That's what our Singularity trying to bring along, not only in education, but also, we have 4 hospitals underneath, and every hospital we ask them in Germany, we ask them to put human as a first, give the human care, and eye contact, make them feel it is home, it is a family, rather than, hey, you have to test your blood and then I have the diagnosis. So we are trying to change, but we can see that in Europe, this changing pace comparing to other regions, still very slow. It might be related to the regulation, might be related to the mentality of the people. So I really want to discuss this afterwards with you and with Salama. And Salama has even more interesting things to bring, how to deal with AI day to day, and how to actually use AI to make our life and professional even better. In other words, how to use AI to make money. I'm sure everyone wants to hear that. The floor is yours, Salama.
Thank you so much, Ying. Everybody can see my slide? Okay, cool. All right, yeah. So hi, everyone. Yeah, I mean, it's really crazy right now, right? Like AI, it's everywhere. And every single day there's a new tool dropping, another breakthrough making headlines. And let's be honest, like it feels like you're drinking from a fire hose. And between the thousands of tools popping up daily, all these high-level conversations that seem to be in some secret code sometimes, like only engineers can understand, and it's very easy to feel lost. And like you're missing out on something big, but can't quite figure out how to get in the game. So what gets me excited is that underneath all that noise, there's this whole world of real concrete opportunities. Not the maybe someday kind of, but you can really start this weekend, right? So we can talk about theories and what startups are doing and where the investments are flowing, but this is all theoretical, and sometimes it feels a little bit also crashing. We feel like, oh my God, I need to be genius to, like Sam Altman, to be able to figure out something like that. So that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. And I'm going to cut through the hype and show you specific ways you can jump in. So maybe you want to start a side hustle, maybe build a new business, or just start to understand AI. Why not while you're making money, right? So that's what we're going to cover. And who knows, maybe that side project or that side hustle might grow in something bigger than you ever imagined. So I've seen it happen, and I'm going to show you how you can make it happen too. So let's talk about what's really going in the AI space. Yeah, so what I find fascinating about the hype is it's like double-edged sword. On one side, it brings massive attention, and more importantly, a lot of money is flowing into the space. And that's when real progress is happening, when big players and smart money starting to pour resources into the development. But then the flip side is it's getting really messy. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the blockchain craze, or maybe crypto craze rings a bell better. But in 2020 or 2021, remember, like it was absolute chaos. Projects popping up every single day, promising to revolutionize everything from coffee brewing to dog walking, and I don't know what else. And what happened, over 90% of them, they went bust, or they turned out to be straight up scams. So right now, I'm getting the same vibes from all these, AI hype and tools launching daily, promises. It feels to me like Web3 all over again. But here's something that might surprise you. Like most of, and Jackin can maybe confirm that, most of these revolutionary AI tools, they're just fancy wrappers around the same few large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude AI, for example. So the reality is you don't need to subscribe to 20 different AI tools or try every single platform that is launching. You can actually get massive results. I'm talking about serious productivity and efficiency gains by just mastering a couple of them. So you don't need to go completely crazy on every launch. But before we dive into the concrete things, how to make those bucks using AI, let's have a quick refresh on the economic promises from diving into the AI space. So the global AI market right now is estimated as of 2023 at 196 billion. So compared to traditional markets like automotive at $2.8 trillion or healthcare at $12 trillion, AI is still very early days. Yet, when you look at other emerging tech markets, AI is already massive. So it's way ahead of, for example, blockchain, where I've spent a couple of years, $7 billion, and virtual reality, $28 billion. So what does this tell us? AI is not just some small experimental technology anymore, and that comes together with what Jackin said before. It's just the start. So it's already bigger than VR and blockchain combined. But compared to traditional industries, we're just getting started. There's so much room for growth, and that's exactly why now is the perfect time to jump in. And it's expected to be growing at nearly 37% year on year, and by 2030, we're looking at $1.81 trillion. So these numbers are massive, but what makes this actually exciting is where this growth is coming from. So this goes way beyond tech companies playing around with some fancy new toys. We're seeing adoption everywhere. Like, as mentioned, healthcare, finance, retail, manufacturing, you name it. And it gets better. Just the Gen AI piece alone, like ChatGPT that everybody's talking about, that's expected to add $280 billion in new software revenue. So that's new money flowing into the space, creating new opportunities. And the really cool part of all this is, unlike the early days of tech, where you need to be a coding genius to get in the game, AI is becoming more accessible every day. So the tools are getting simpler, the barriers are dropping, and that's creating opportunities for people who they know how to spot them, basically. So I created a small game. I mean, let's see. I've got C-level executives, board members, and successful entrepreneurs in my program, but I picked these next examples on purpose. That's people who started with zero tech background, who've never worked in a corporation. So this way you can't tell me, okay, yeah, Salama, so, but these guys, they're superior, they're geniuses, they're corporate beasts. I want you to see how AI can empower anyone, really. And because if they can make it work, imagine what smart, brilliant mind like yours could do with these tools. So let me tell you about Martin. Martin has been in health and fitness for 40 years. We're talking celebrity clients, in-person training, the whole deal. So he's got this unique three-pillar system combining fitness, nutrition, and spirituality. Super successful in his local gym, but getting this online, he thought it was not possible. So you know what is funny? He actually told me, never thought I'd say this, but AI completely transformed his business in just a couple of weeks. We're not talking months, we're not talking years, we're talking weeks. So what happened was really mind-blowing, to me as well, to be honest. So within 2 weeks of joining my program, he had 3 solid leads. By week 4, he landed his first premium client. And that single client, it paid off for everything. So the best part for Martin is AI became like having 10 expert team members working around the clock. Suddenly, his unique coaching system wasn't limited to his local gym anymore. His expertise is now reaching people he never could have reached before. And today, he has a full pipeline of prospects. So this is really a perfect example of how AI can take decades of expertise and amplify it. Martin didn't change what he was great at. He just found a way to scale it using AI. And wait until I tell you about Afaf. So Afaf started exactly where many of you might be right now, looking at AI like it was this mysterious black box. She had this dream of creating a leadership platform for women back in her country, Saudi Arabia, but had no clue where to start. And what's amazing about Afaf's story is how fast things change. So the tools helped her start her business and made everything move 10 times faster. So think about that for a second. Like what usually takes months of planning and setup, she did in weeks. But the really mind-blowing part is she's now working on translating our entire AI Career Accelerator platform into Saudi dialect. And this joins what actually Jachin said before. You know, there are still points where you can add value. So she's not just building a business, she's making AI accessible to women across Saudi Arabia. And the impact is multiplying way beyond what she initially ever imagined. So these stories, like Martin and Afaf, they tell us everything we need to know. You might be an experienced professional like Martin looking to scale your expertise, or someone like Afaf with a bold new vision, and you can leverage AI in order to reach points that you would never have thought before. And their success started with a very simple but powerful formula. So first, what did we do? We identified their sweet spot, the intersection of their passion, their skills, what people would pay for, and what the world needs. Then we got crystal clear on their vision, mission, and target audience. So once we had that foundation, we created laser-focused content on their target platforms to reach their audiences. And in parallel, we crafted their unique value proposition, their promise, and built out the pillars for their offering. And now you're probably thinking, yeah, okay, I've read all that in business books. And you're right, the principles aren't new. But here's what's different today. When you combine social media platforms with AI tools and know how to optimize them at 100%, that's absolutely bombastic. Martin and Afaf both tried sometimes for years without much success. But when we applied this formula with AI, in weeks, they managed to hit their targets. So that's all it took to see results. Now they're thriving. So let me share 3 tried and tested business models where you can get started. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. I've been analyzing the market for easy and profitable business ideas, and these 3 stand out. Just for people, as I said, it doesn't need to be complex. You don't need to go and fundraise. It's really to start slowly but surely, to make it super easy and almost like don't have any reasons not to start. And the 3 areas are AI services, AI products, and developing AI apps. So first up, AI services. So this is perfect if you love helping others succeed. Like small businesses are desperate to stay competitive, but they're overwhelmed by tech. And in general, they cannot really afford consulting fees from the big consulting houses who might have the answer. So, and anyway, the big consulting houses, they are very busy with the tier 1 and maybe tier 2. So yeah, so they kind of left on the side. And that's where you come in. Imagine offering them AI receptionists that handle calls and bookings for 24/7, or marketing automation that grows their business while they're sleeping. And you can start local, keep your prices competitive, and build strong relationships with the business owners in your area. Second, AI products. So this is where it gets really interesting. AI lets you create things that have costed a fortune just a few years ago. So think website templates optimized for specific industries, digital tools that solve common problems, or even specialized content for different markets. Afaf is doing exactly this, creating leadership development resources in her language, Arabic for Saudi Arabia, reaching an audience that was previously completely underserved. Exactly what also Jachin showed with the two targets for the aged in Asia and the solopreneurs. Third, developing AI apps. So now this might sound technical, but believe me, with the no-code platforms like Bubble or Glide, you can build apps without being a coding wizard. Think plant identification apps or content repurposing tools or personalized learning platforms. You can monetize through apps by downloads, by subscriptions, and in-app purchases. There are plenty of business models that you can just copy and paste. And the beauty of these models is you can start with one and naturally expand in others. So that's exactly what happened with both Martin and Afaf. They started with one focus and their businesses naturally grew into multiple revenue streams. So how can you actually make this happen? I'm going to break it down into 3 simple phases. So phase 1 is market analysis, and this is where most people go wrong. Instead of jumping straight into building something, and again, that again goes with what Jachin said, like we want to use AI. No, you first identify real opportunities. So look at what Martin did. He didn't just show his fitness program online. He first validated that people would actually pay for his unique 3-pillar approach. So we assess the competition, and more importantly, we look for gaps there to be filled. Phase 2 is AI integration. This is where we pick the right tools and build those smooth workflows. So remember what Afaf said about her business moving 10 times faster? So that's what happens when you set up your AI systems right. So we're talking about selecting tools, just those which are really necessary and that actually fit your business, testing them properly and making sure they deliver the results. And phase 3, it's really the exciting part, is the business launch. So we start with a minimum viable product, get it in front of the real clients, and then, this is very important, we create a feedback loop. So both Martin and Afaf had paying clients within weeks because they didn't wait for perfection. Perfection is no good. We got their services out there and improved based on real customer feedback. So let me show you how to overcome the common roadblocks that come up during these phases. So the challenges you're probably thinking about right now are technical complexity. I get it. Like when you look at AI from the outside, it seems overwhelming. All these tools, all this jargon. But remember, Martin, 40 years in fitness, not a tech person at all. He mastered what he needed in weeks because we focus on the tools that actually matter for his business. Market uncertainty is another big one. You might be wondering if there's really room for another player. But look at what Afaf did. The market for leadership training was crowded, but she found that unique angle, bringing to the Saudi women in their dialect. There's always room for the right approach. And then there's resource constraints, time, money, knowing where to start. That's exactly why we created a structured learning path. So you don't have to figure it all out on your own or waste time on trial and error. So you get proven frameworks and expert guidance every step at a time. So let me tell you exactly how this works. So when you join us, we start with intensive one-to-one coaching sessions, just you and me, focused on your specific goals and targets, We get laser sharp about your strategy, no generic advice, no cookie cutter solutions, just like we did with Martin and Afaf. We'll craft a path that makes sense for you. Then you become part of our weekly group sessions. This is where the community meets to stay ahead of the curve. For example, this week we deep dived into Claude AI's latest update, which are absolutely insane, and explored how to leverage them for even more productivity and efficiency. So real practical stuff. And then you'll get access to our rich content library. This is a living, breathing resource that grows with our community. Members exchange ideas, support each other, and you can reach anytime to me digitally. And this is what I love most. We travel to conferences together. So let me tell you, what you learn at a conference, being there in person, networking, seeing the latest innovations firsthand, it's 10 times more valuable than sitting through theory courses. Yeah, so it's very simple. You can book your strategy call with me. This is real working session where we'll look at your specific situation, your goals, and map out your path forward. And once you're in, you'll immediately get access to the community, our content library, and you can start booking your one-to-one sessions. You'll also get the schedule for our next group session, usually happening weekly. And speaking of conferences, I've got NeurIPS in Vancouver coming up. So this is the largest, most brilliant, and oldest AI conferences in the world. Started in 1987, and you'll be rubbing shoulders with the people that actually made these LLMs and create those innovative tools. So I want to wrap up by sharing something I've noticed. The people who succeed in AI are not necessarily the most tech-savvy. They're the ones who take action, who surround themselves with the right community, and who stay consistent. Thank you.
Thank you, Salama. Thank you. I tell you, this is the first time I join your real presentation, even before we talk in person and online. I want to make sure that you will have a one-to-one session with me on your program so I can learn something. And then I really want to feel how it help, because you know, me as a professor in university, when I hear your presentation, I feel threatened. I was thinking, Jesus, oh my God, in the future, what can we do? You know, we don't need to teach students entrepreneurship, and consulting firms, McKinsey doesn't need to give presentations to the clients. You are basically disruptive all what we already had for several decades. I want to learn more from you. Thank you very much. Next, I'm very happy to have Alex here. So Alex, please switch on your, yes, thank you. I want to really thank Alex, because right now Alex de Vries is in China, and he is the only scholar, AI researcher and scholar in our panel today. So we have a lot of frontier experts here, but Alex is a scholar, academic scholar. Alex is a Dutch and studying and doing research in Amsterdam and Free University, especially on the emerging technologies, social and environmental impact globally. I have seen that many medias would like to hear his opinion, would like to see what is the possible future, because as you know, this is a field where everyone is just trying, even like Chen and Jackin already mentioned that even though Google already tried for 20 years, and still we have not enough research on social and economic impact and sustainability, that perspective. So thank you very much, Alex. It's a really short notice, and I very appreciate you support our webinar, and you would like to share your opinion on this topic. I will quickly give the floor to you, and you let us know. And afterwards, we will have a panel discussion, including you as well. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And first of all, just a quick check. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, thank you for the introduction. I'm glad I could be a part of this, especially given the timelines. But it worked out. Here I am. And I definitely want to touch upon one very interesting dimension when it comes to artificial intelligence, which is the sustainability, which is sadly often overlooked in the middle of the whole hype and fear of missing out of everyone trying to use basically artificial intelligence for everything. There is a flip side to all of that. And the flip side is it costs a whole lot of energy. How much exactly is something that I have been working on in terms of trying to quantify that, and also trying to quantify where is this going in the coming few years. And I would like to highlight that, first of all, my previous work actually focused on the sustainability of digital assets. So before I started working on artificial intelligence on this question, I was working on digital assets like Bitcoin, and I was also looking into questions like how much energy does that consume, how much carbon emissions are related to that, how much water consumption is related to that, how much electronic waste is produced by all of that. And those numbers kind of started to explode as of 2018. So before that, global data center electricity demand was relatively stable at 1% of global electricity consumption. Then when it was 2018, all of a sudden there was a big boom in cryptocurrency mining, and that started to draw a lot of power. Cryptocurrency mining alone quickly became responsible for 0.5% of global electricity consumption on top of what we were already using for all other data centers combined. So had actually a very rapid 50% expansion of our total global data center electricity consumption as a result of cryptocurrency mining. And then after working on that for about a decade. I actually started this in 2016 when I launched my Bitcoin Energy Consumption Index. I realized that with the launch of ChatGPT, artificial intelligence was actually going to enter a very similar growth trajectory. And we saw very sudden mass adoption of really large scale AI models. And that has also very big implications in terms of the energy needed to run that. And what I saw was that just as we saw that cryptocurrency mining in just 5 years' time became responsible for 0.5% of global electricity consumption, artificial intelligence could actually have a very similar growth trajectory. The way I quantified that was by looking at the supply chain for high-end AI servers. I really looked at what is the capability or production capability of the AI server supply chain for the coming few years. What is the energy consumption profile of those AI servers? And what does that mean in terms of potential electricity consumption coming from AI? Not so much considering the developments in demand, because if you look at what's going on, the supply chain for these services is extremely constrained, has been extremely constrained. And it means that demand for AI services is already way higher than the supply chain can handle. So if you can figure out what is the production capability of that supply chain in the coming years, what is the energy consumption profile of those machines being produced in the coming few years, you can actually get a pretty good feeling for what that might mean in terms of well, basically the overall energy consumption of anything AI related. And I figured that if you look at the projections, then by the year 2027, anything AI could be consuming as much electricity as my home country, the Netherlands, combined. So for reference, that is also the same as what today is required for Bitcoin mining. And that in itself is already 0.5% of global electricity consumption. So in just a few years' time, by the year 2027, we could be in a similar situation for artificial intelligence. And I must say those projections were very conservative, because I did not include factors like cooling. Typically, you have a lot of machines running in the data center, and then you need like an additional 50% or more power just to keep the machines running at at the right temperature, and keep their performance optimal. I didn't have any data on where those machines were going, so I couldn't say anything about cooling. One other thing is, ever since I did these numbers, NVIDIA, which was the dominant manufacturer of these servers a year ago, and by the way still is, has been beating all expectations. So they're actually capable of producing more than previously projected, which also means that simply the growth trajectory of the energy consumption related to their servers is also increasing faster than anticipated. We're now at the point where we even saw OpenAI very recently lobbying to open 5 to 7 massive 5 gigawatt data centers within the US borders. Yeah, just to give you an idea of what that means, then you're talking more than 2 times the numbers that I just mentioned. I mentioned that AI would potentially consume as much power as my home country, the Netherlands. Yeah, with 5 to 7 5 gigawatt data centers, you're talking at least 2 times my home country, the Netherlands, potentially even 3 times. You're actually starting to get to the level of a country like Germany in terms of power demand. And within the borders of the US, you have to consider that every single one of those data centers by itself would consume 1% of the power available on the US grid. So 7 of them would also take 7% of the total US power grid. It's extreme. It's hard to say if those plans will be realized, because fitting in this much power demand is a challenge in itself. But it's not that far-fetched that at least the energy consumption of AI is rapidly exploding, and big tech companies are actively pouring in a lot of money to build out this data center infrastructure to support artificial intelligence, which will, of course, mean a very big increases in energy consumption by those data centers as well. You've probably seen the headline that BlackRock and Microsoft were trying to raise 30 billion to invest in new data centers. And that does not include potential debt that they can use as well to build out new data center infrastructure. So altogether, they could be having 100 billion to build out new data center infrastructures. If you look at the cryptocurrency mining sector, over the past years, this sector has been earning 10 billion a year. And with those 10 billion a year, in half a decade, they managed to become responsible for 0.5% of global electricity consumption. I think it's pretty clear that this amount of money is peanuts compared with what big tech companies can ultimately pour in data center infrastructure, which means that the growth potential of AI is also way larger than what we previously have seen for cryptocurrency mining. And that just means that all of data center energy consumption is in for some rapid growth in the very near future. If you have seen the projections of the International Energy Agency earlier, I thought it was this year or at the end of last year, they projected that all data centers combined, so regular data centers, AI data centers, cryptocurrency miners, everything combined, could very quickly by the year 2026 already become responsible for 3 to 4% of global electricity consumption. And that was actually before OpenAI was lobbying for those really massive data centers I just mentioned. Then you're already talking about the size of a country like Germany in terms of electricity consumption. It's really massive. But I have to add that you don't even have to look forward to see the potential impact of artificial intelligence on the energy grid and related carbon emissions. You can already see this today in the environmental reports of Microsoft and Google. If you look at their environmental reports over the last year, you will see that both Microsoft and Google are reporting significant increases in their carbon emissions. And well, for example, Google was very actively pointing to artificial intelligence as the reason of this. So keep in mind they have a net zero target by the year 2030, but instead of going down, their carbon emissions went up by almost 50% compared to 5 years ago. And the main reason is artificial intelligence, and it's twofold. At one hand, the energy consumption, their total energy consumption is rapidly going up. On the other hand, they're also seeing an increase in carbon emissions simply from the build out of their data center infrastructure, which will of course consume more energy in the future, but also during the construction phase, there's also supply chain emissions, scope 3 emissions related to that as well. And combined, the increasing energy consumption along with the data center build out is rapidly driving up their carbon emissions today. And this was actually for Google, it was for the year 2023. This was before they launched AI overviews earlier this year. So it's pretty likely that their next year report might be even worse than the current year report. But we'll have to wait until the summer of next year to find out. But in the meanwhile, we can say for sure that there is a very real world impact from artificial intelligence already. We don't have to wait for that until the year 2026. We can see that already today as these big tech companies are rapidly trying to grow on the domain of artificial intelligence. Now, having said all that, maybe it's good to take a quick step back and think about why is this even happening? Why is AI such a big driver of data center electricity consumption? What makes it so energy intensive? And if you think about large language models like ChatGPT, you can figure like, okay, if you have a multi-billion parameter model in the background that needs to work on every single interaction that you have with ChatGPT, then that can become energy intensive very quickly. I mean, if you consider it on an interaction level, it's not even that much. A single interaction with ChatGPT is estimated to consume maybe 3 watt-hours of electricity, maybe a bit more than that. That's not a lot, and that's like having an LED light, low lumen, running for 1 hour. But if you think about that compared to a standard Google search, which is maybe 0.3 watt-hours per interaction, then you suddenly see like, okay, on an interaction level, this is actually a 10-fold increase, or maybe even 20-fold increase, and that's a lot. Especially when you're talking about not just a few interactions every single day, but you're talking at Google scale about billions of interactions every single day. If Google today uses 3 terawatt-hours of electricity a year to run their search engine, a 10-fold increase in that would put them at the level of power demand equal to a country like Ireland just to operate their search engine, and that's for Google alone. So I think this highlights that, first of all, AI is indeed energy intensive. But one big issue that AI also has, especially this generative AI, is that at least historically, it has always been the case that bigger is better. And the more parameters you put in a model, the bigger you make them, the better they perform, which is great from a commercial perspective, simply because, if you have a better performing model, it would logically result in you having a bigger market share, you being able to attract more users and generate more revenues from that. So everyone wants to have the biggest, largest, best model. But the downside is the biggest model also requires more computational resources. The bigger you make a model, the more computational resources you require. And more computational resources also require more energy. And I think this dynamic is very key when it comes to artificial intelligence, because in the past, data center hardware really benefited from efficiency gains, but nowadays we don't see efficiency gains having a very big benefit in terms of reducing the energy consumption of AI. Actually, there is no benefit at all simply because what is happening is that the efficiency gains are used to make the models even bigger than before. There's no guarantee this dynamic will continue to work like this in the future, but at least historically, for the time being, it's not helping AI. It's actually making it really, it's almost fundamentally incompatible with environmental sustainability as a result of this dynamic. Because if you think from an environmental perspective, less is better. From an AI perspective, more is better, and you just can't combine these two in any way. So I think that's the real challenge with AI, and I think it's important to keep that in mind when you're working with this technology. There are a lot of other things to consider, and I just wanted to check quickly, like how much time do I have left at this point?
You can go for another 2 minutes.
Okay, then I will just, because I wanted to also highlight what can we maybe do to fix this, but this is increasing energy consumption does not just mean more carbon emissions. I mean, obviously, having more energy consumption means that, yeah, we're probably going to be using more fossil fuels somewhere in the world because our renewable energy capacity is limited. It also means more water consumption. Water data centers need direct cooling, but also indirectly, and the electricity generation uses cooling as well. So there's water consumption there. And lastly, those AI servers, they get 3 years of support by NVIDIA. That's a regular server gets at least 6 years of support. Think about all the electronic waste that's generated as a result of this, because the lifespan of these servers is just a lot shorter. And then we're not even talking about the local impacts of these data centers yet, because if you put a 5 gigawatt data center somewhere, it's really gonna strain a power grid. People will definitely feel it in their wallets because electricity prices go up, and what do they get back from all that? So there is actually a whole lot to think about when it comes to dealing with artificial intelligence. And I think a key thing to consider now is like, okay, what does that mean when we want to interact with this technology? Well, sadly, the data and the numbers that I'm talking about are not being provided by the big tech companies. Actually, companies like Google are more, you could say they're avoiding giving transparency, unfortunately, because if you read their environmental report, it says like, okay, we don't really want to provide very granular information with regard to AI. We don't think that's meaningful. But that makes it really hard for the rest of the world to assess what's really going on with regard to AI. And as long as that transparency is not being provided, it makes it really hard for everyone else to put numbers on this and to figure out what is the most environmentally responsible thing to do. And I don't expect this to change anytime in the near future, because even the new recent AI Act that was introduced in Europe kind of leaves environmental disclosures in the hands of code of conduct on a completely voluntary basis. So that's probably not going to improve anytime soon. And actually, this is not just a challenge just for AI. This is anything digital. The footprint of anything we do in our digital lives is not very tangible. That makes it really hard to assess what's going on in the background. What is the impact? What's happening with terms of carbon emissions, waste, water, etc. And as long as you don't get that, if you have an apple and a chocolate bar, it's really simple to make a decision like what is the right thing to do if you're going to pick a food to eat. But in the digital world, the differences can be massive, just like there is a massive difference between eating an apple and a chocolate bar, except those differences are not transparent. And then it's really tough making a choice. What you can do, at least, is to be very careful in applying this technology. There's a lot of fear of missing out, hype, etc. But I always encourage people to take a quick step back and really try to think about what problem are they trying to solve, and then try to find the best fit solution for them in that situation, considering AI as part of the toolbox in the solutions, but just one of the tools that we have, and there are many others, and probably more often than not, generative AI is not going to be the solution you need for your specific problem. And I think this can be essential in already preventing quite a lot of waste. And I hope that, we can all ask our suppliers like Microsoft and Google for more information, so we can also make more responsible decisions going forward. And with that, I would like to end.
Alex, it is very informative. I think with your joining today, our story is very complete because you talk from very, very broad at the environmental level, and Jackin talk about the industry and corporate level, and then Salama talk about how to use AI to promote economy, promote your business level. I think three of you really make a great storyline. Now my question going to our panelist is, with all these angles, where is actually the boundary of AI? Because like Alex, you already mentioned, there are a lot of concerns on sustainability, on environmental protection. And then Jackin also mentioned that for the next generation's education, for the healthcare, for example. And then Salama also mentioned how to use that. So for us, there is another thing showing in front of us, like, oh, there will be another kind of different type of the war in front of us. It's like an AI war. And Alex, now you're Dutch and then doing research in Europe, but now you're broadcasting your ideas from China. And so you probably have a really special angle to tell us where is the boundary. And also, Jackin, you tell us, how can we make this old new stuff to make our human life more sustainable and more reliable? Because many of people and countries very scared of this. In Europe, in EU, they started to apply new regulation on AI, on data protection. And in China, it looks very open to collect so-called clean data, like Jackie mentioned, we need a clean data. And in US, they are building more and more data center to consume more energy. This is really, for me, I think for a lot of our audience is a chaos. So please tell us, what can we do? Where is the boundary?
And who should start answering
You can
that?
start, Alex.
I was just talking for 20 minutes, so maybe I'll leave the opportunity for someone else.
Jackie, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a well-formed thought, but that's a pretty wide-ranging question. I would say a lot of it, from my perspective, comes back to the incentives, right? Like, where are the boundaries? Where is this heading? A lot of it comes back to just what are the incentives at play, right? And so the motivator, right, for a Google or for an OpenAI and Microsoft or for a Facebook to invest and billions into building out data centers, paying $1 billion a year in salary costs just to have top researchers to build out the next generation of models. Like that's because there's financial incentive behind it, right? And so OpenAI wants to talk about how the financial incentive in the end game is AGI, right? It's superior to human intelligence. Like that's general intelligence. That's kind of their end game. Whether that's marketing or kind of their true belief is TBD, but that's their end game. And up until this point, enough people are willing to put enough money behind that, because if you can reach that, then how do you value that as a corporation? And that's part of the reason why they switched from a non-profit and converted to a for-profit company. Same thing goes for Google. I mean, when that ChatGPT moment hit, right, for the world, we had all this research. Actually, we had a bunch of models and a bunch of stuff that we could do, but we got caught flat-footed. And then the financial incentive is, hey, we might lose search. Google might lose its number one position in a lot of its cash cow businesses. So we have to invest more. And so now it becomes an arms race. And so I don't know if that's a direct answer to your question of where's the boundary. Is I think we have to look at where are the incentives and where do the incentives stop, right? At some point, maybe there is no ROI on the billions of dollars of investment in OpenAI's data centers, right? And then it'll collapse, and there may be other reasons why the financial incentives are not there. So yeah, as much as I get the contradiction or that you pointed out, Alex, with Google, and for a long time it was all about sustainability, get to carbon zero by X years. But now we have this financial incentive that we have to go play that, or Google has to go play that game. And so we end up in a contradiction.
Exactly. San, do you have anything to share with us from your angle?
We actually went to the microscopic level. I think I'm glad Salama talked about wrappers versus deep tech. So my question, and this is all kind of forming, comes in two angles. One is that there's a concentration in deep tech. The people who are developing deep tech, actually, this is the province of deep pockets and the few. So XAI is coming on board. You have Altman and his group, but you also have a few other clusters, constellations. So you have concentration, and there's the second thing that we have right now is the race for AI supremacy. So I just saw a statistic that at the start of this year, China had the biggest share of LLMs. And if you read the press, China is a year behind. So there is a race for so-called AI supremacy. At the moment, it's bifurcated between the two. And my question is, where are the haves and the have-nots? And of course, the question I have, an existential one, which Yin touched on, is where does Europe stand? Now, Macron has created a $500 million France first national champion, but I hardly see any LLMs coming out of France. I saw Singapore and Germany and so on. And instead of new creative energy, I see that the EU has been the first to pass an AI Act, which will be ratified. I think it's been ratified already. It's coming into effect in 2026. So we have the regulation, the policies ahead of something that you, at the early stages, you should, as an entrepreneur, say, let's let it rip. Otherwise we're not going to go anywhere. So I just have a real issue there with nations that have an AI framework and those that don't. And I'm talking about the South. And I think Salama is great because empowering individuals, solopreneurship, and all that. Perhaps that's the way it's going to start in many, many countries, because you will have access to it. And it doesn't matter even if you have it through a wrapper, because in the wrappers industry, 90% will fail, or even more, 95%. There are 5 that are going to try, but these 5% are going to be really very powerful. They're just going to ride on existing commercial models, and they're going to be innovators. So I think it's a very interesting development, and I don't have anything more to add, but rather than nations need to step up, educating or getting their population aware that there are new possibilities for increasing productivity, and also contribution to nation building.
Yeah. Thank you, San. Actually, in Switzerland, Switzerland is not part of EU, but Switzerland tried to apply or using reference of EU's regulation on AI. I knew that Dr. Urs Luxemburger has some knowledge about, he himself is a lawyer, attorney, so has some ideas about Switzerland trying to apply a new AI regulation. Maybe you can talk about this impact on the Swiss society, even beyond.
Thank you, Professor Cheng. First of all, will there be any boundaries? Are there boundaries, and are they visible? I don't think they are. And I think the world currently seems to divide into 3 zones. One zone is led, I think, by the tech companies in the US. They have the power to convince the US government to be light on regulation, like the US has always beaten that path and very successfully beaten that path. Be light on regulation, let things go, and be embracing to new ideas and new industries. And I think that has been a success model for many new industries in the past. And I think they keep on adhering to that success model. China or Asia is letting it rip because they see they have most of the data available and they want to use that data, and they have probably a society that is easiest to be convinced that the data should not be protected or whatever. They are very willingly handing all their data over. So be aware of China. They will create enormous models on their data that they have available. And then there is Europe, and Europe seems to be the scare cat in the group that is afraid of what could be happening to their data. And the first thing they think of when they see artificial intelligence is to draw up an enormous regulation that keeps any abuse of the data away, but which probably also will keep innovative tech companies and the creation of innovative tech companies away. And we see that effort of France, we see the effort of some countries to be countervailing, but I'm afraid the future will tell that too much regulation too early could be resulting in stifling an industry that would otherwise also be something that Europe could embrace. So in my eyes, yes, Europe is on the verge of coming out with a very extensive regulation that from a legal perspective is not a bad thing. I think sooner or later we will have to think about that regulation, but we shouldn't regulate it at the time before the baby is born. Otherwise we have not much that we can regulate. And if we regulate too early, and to me, it appears that Europe is going to regulate too early, we will kill our own baby, and we will simply be in a war against those, let's call it giants, in the tech world, the so-called incumbents that will try to get at our data, whichever way, and that will try to work around those regulations and get the most out of it. And so I believe the future will be kind of decided between Asia at large, maybe China, and the USA. And those two countries will probably be the biggest promoters of the AI industry, whereas Europe will be an onlooker, trying to blame both of these countries of using too much energy, too much water, too many resources, and too much data. And we will be, so to speak, the AI desert. Of course, the optimistic view from Europe will be that all of this AI craze is simply an errand industry. It will die down. But Europe has said that about many industries of the future, and we have not fully participated in the modern world as much as we could. So I'm a little bit afraid that we will be a model regulation on which all the other countries will also build in the future. but the other countries will build it around an existing, very powerful industry that they have, whereas we do not build it around our industry. We build it around what I think Jachin has described, an industry that is trying to apply AI to be defensive about what they have been doing all along, and not an industry that is saying, how could I make my product better and use AI, or why could I use AI to enhance whatever humanity needs? But instead, we will just be on a very defensive footing. That's kind of my comment, my 5 cents for that.
Thank you very much. We have 5 minutes to go. Alex, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, well, you were talking about boundaries, and I actually think when it comes to AI, there's quite a lot of natural bounds, at least in the short term. Especially, even if you assume that the growth potential of AI is as big as the big tech companies claim, then still, that doesn't mean like we're going to be using unlimited resources in the near future to fuel all of this. In the end, we have limited capacity on our electricity grids, and if we want to expand our data center capacity, it needs to fit in somewhere. To realize this growth, we need to be able to put these data centers somewhere. OpenAI can lobby for 5 gigawatt data centers, which is massive. Every single one of those data centers, like I already mentioned, consuming half as much power as a country like the Netherlands, as much as a nuclear reactor can put out in terms of energy. But there aren't many places where you can put a data center like this. Like most grids, you will be lucky if you can even get 1 gigawatt of spare capacity to power your data center. Finding 5 gigawatts somewhere on a grid, well, good luck with that. And that's not even considering the fact that data centers are becoming less attractive for local economies because they don't offer a whole lot in return for consuming all this power. They cost a lot, they consume a lot of resources, but they don't create jobs, especially not long-term jobs. Maybe short-term construction, long-term jobs, completely negligible compared to the amount of power consumed anyway. Also, they don't generate economic activity. This is the typical promises that big tech companies make. But if there's a data center in Ireland and I'm in the Netherlands, I don't have to migrate to Ireland to use the data center. And the other way around, the data center doesn't have to be near my home either. So there's no there's no reason why that would generate any extra economic activity, at least locally, where that data center is situated, and those data center operators can just as easily move to the next best location if one location doesn't fit them properly. I think a lot of areas around the world are starting to realize that data centers don't have a very attractive value proposition for them. There was Sweden in Europe previously trying to subsidize electricity use for data center industry. They introduced subsidies in 2017. They revoked them last year because they figured like, hey, this is costing us a lot of renewable power, but we don't get anything back. There's no jobs, there's no economic activity, never mind. A lot of regions around the world are facing this issue. Even Ireland, I already mentioned, a very traditional big data center hub in Europe, has been feeling the strain. Data centers in Ireland consume more power than all residences combined. And the grid is really running out of capacity to fuel extra data center. So they are also starting to pull the brake. A lot of regions around the world, also several states in the US, they are actively pulling the brakes on data center construction. And there's a very simple reality is, if we want to expand artificial intelligence or anything else that we do in the digital world, we need data centers and we need a place to put those data centers. So if we don't have that, then of course this introduces a natural limit to how fast and how big this can grow, at least in the short run. And then secondly, also with regard to AI, I mentioned bigger is better, but what's now happening is that the internet is being flooded with AI generated output, which is actually unusable for training new models. You can't train a model on AI generated output. It's like, garbage in, garbage out. So bigger is better might stop applying as well in the near future. That could be good news for the environment, because it means that we lose our incentive to keep pouring in more resources into artificial intelligence. But it would be bad news for anyone who is hopeful for the future of artificial intelligence, having the impact that people now expect it will. And I think these are natural boundaries that you kind of run in different ways when you're looking at this industry that is now, of course, rapidly expanding, but of course, it's feeling the strain on all sides. It's feeling there's friction as a result of that on all sides, and that's kind of keeping things also somewhat in check. I personally think that's good news, at least from an environmental perspective. Within the tech world, not everyone is going to be happy with that, because they don't want to be constrained when they're trying to grow things as fast as they want to grow things. But okay, this is how it is. From an environmental point of view, that's good. From a tech point of view, well, yeah, we'll have to see. And maybe the tech has also peaked, especially with LLMs. If we're now in the situation where we can't make these models bigger and better because of all the garbage that's floating around on the internet due to LLMs generating tons of output that new models are trained on. Maybe peak AI is already behind us. Who knows? But we'll find out soon, I suppose.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just some natural boundaries. I think it's good to have them.
Thank you very much, Alex. There are so much things to discuss. Obviously, it's not sufficient time for us to continue. I'm sure in the future events, we want to have all of you come to join online or offline using AI or not, less or more. We want to have you back again and talk more about this topic. We really appreciate Jackin from Korean and Alex. Now you're in China very late. You would like to join, and Salama, you want to share this and empower individual entrepreneurs. We also want to thank SwissCham Asia, give strongest support to organize this webinar, and in the future webinars. Our purpose and vision is to provide as much knowledge and wisdom to our audience and members. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a
Sharon.
good
Thank you. Have a good evening, afternoon. Bye.
Bye-bye.